Hi there, and welcome to episode 35 of Anne and Steve Talk Stuff, where an artist and economist walk into a podcast and things happen. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm good. I'm good. And how are you?
Well, I'm a little fouivru, as we'd say in Irish, which literally translates as under pressure, but it's more like atmospheric pressure, or as we'd say in English, a little bit under the weather, I suppose.
Mm,
Because so I'm yeah, I haven't felt great this weekend,
mm.
and just even though I don't have necessarily classic symptoms, I didn't want to risk it. So I had a couple of symptoms. I got tested yesterday, and I'm awaiting to know the
Okay.
truth. So obviously you and I are not in the same room. We are
No.
far away. But yeah, so hopefully I really hope I'll know when by the time this is going out.
Yeah.
I really hope that I do not have COVID-19. But
Well, look, fingers crossed. And look, you're doing one of the things I really like is you're doing exactly the right thing, right? Which is to be maximally risk averse. You're like, I feel that there's a problem. I'm reacting directly to the problem. I'm doing something about it. I mean, in a certain kind of precaution, you're adopting a precautionary principle, which is like you're not working in the school, doing the projects with the school. You're not, you know, uh, going shopping in
exactly.
pennies or whatever. Like you're just going, I'm going to stay home now and just
Mm.
go get tested and await the results,
Yeah, and
which
it's
is exactly the right thing to do, right?
and it's one of these things I don't have you been tested?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is my second time. And I mean not mean to freak people out, but it's not a fun. It's not the crack. Like you
Yep.
really you queue up into a warehouse where all these absolute heroes are there doing the necessary work in having to shove things down people's gobs and up their nose.
Yeah.
And fair play to them. But queuing up there in the darkness of the morning in the car and, as I said, having things shoved
Yeah.
down and up you. it's not it's not
I have to go. I have to go for a completely voluntary. I feel completely fine. I have to go for a COVID test because I'm doing other voices
oh cool.
in Dingle in December, and yeah, it's yeah. So I'm this wonderful lady Mairead asked me would I like to do other voices. It's and I said, do you know that I don't play any musical instruments of any kind? They're like, no, just come and talk about the future. And I was like, okay. So
So if there's any
yeah,
confusion, you're listening to this podcast. The economist is actually Stephen, not, and I am the artist. But the economist is going to other voices,
it's
which
bizarre. Yeah,
cool.
so it's going to be broadcast live on YouTube, and I think on RT as well, um, and yeah. So anyway, as a result of that, I have to go. Like everyone who's involved in the other voices thing has to get a COVID test. So
Yes,
before you go near the like the set, as it were, everyone involved has to be COVID negative.
has to be
Which
done.
is like I I'm voluntarily having somebody shove two giant Q-tips up my nose in order to get a night away in Dingle. Yeah. So
Why
yeah,
not?
it's
I mean, there's worse things you could do to do
that's fair.
and to
That's
do
fair.
worse
And
things.
I think maybe the worst thing is just while the thing is in your nose and they're counting it to 10
Yeah, yeah.
and 1 and 2 and 3 and you're like fucking 4, hurry up, and 5 and 7. That's yeah. You're like,
I
are we
every
done yet? No, you have 2 nostrils and 1. You're like, yeah, so
it's
that'll
did
be a
you
whole thing.
did you get it shoved up both nostrils?
Both, yeah,
Oh,
they weren't messing.
Jesus, I just got one, thankfully. Anyway,
No.
I don't know yet, but I will know. Obviously by the time this is published, we will know. I will know.
Okay.
But right now, yeah, that's it's always that stark reminder because sometimes you can just be moping around in the pandemic, going, "Huh," and then it's like, oh, damn it, I
Mm,
can't be lax, because obviously going anywhere, if you've ever had a little bit of a sniffle, you'd be like, yeah, well, look, I'll be grand, I'll take a lemsip or whatever, and I'll go do a thing and meet people. But now it's the responsibility is so much different. It's so,
Yeah.
the way you frame, you can't be like, I'll be grand, because you're like, well, what if you're not? And what if you pass it on to someone who passes it on to someone else who passes on to someone else who dies? It's
Yep. Yep.
it's this
Yep.
kind of consideration, I suppose.
I remember when I went to give blood for the first time, and I said, "Look, because you have to go through this kind of like fairly rigorous questionnaire. Obviously, people are not like, in you come, lad. Like that's not what happens, right? There's a fairly rigorous questionnaire. I mean, as you know, and I asked them, and there are fairly personal questions on that. So I just asked the lady who was taking the questions, the nurse. I said, do people lie to you on this form? Because you would imagine if you were because it asks you about what kind of sex you have, right, and this kind of stuff, and you could imagine like when you're giving blood, you're with your neighbors. You're literally like, hello, how are you? Hello,
Yeah.
right? And so I mean, you're in a kind of a private cubicle. You're not doing it on a microphone, right? But I can imagine people would be, especially if they didn't necessarily want to admit it to anyone, let alone maybe not themselves. Very private kind of questions. And I asked her, I obviously answered honestly, and does anybody lie to you on these things? And she said, you know what, we do every so often. The words that she used was very Jedi. She's like, you sense a hesitation. And what you do when you sense a hesitation is you just remind them this blood could be going into a sick baby. So anything you got to tell me doesn't go beyond the cubicle, goes in the form, but that's what you have to understand. And she said normally after that people just go, all right, Grant, yeah, no, and they give her the truth, and that's grand.
It's
but yeah
I remember some comedian talking about reading through the giving blood form and realizing, oh, I've had such a boring life, I want to go live my life so when I come back I can't actually give blood anymore.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. It's been too crazy. Couldn't possibly.
I had a thing where I've actually got quite rare blood.
Oh.
I have blood that's in demand. Yeah, so I can't. I'm not a universal donor, but it's
fancy.
A very fancy blood.
Fancy.
Yeah, I'm Rhesus B negative, and I'll be negative. That's terrible, but I've had a number of occasions where, because I've given blood a handful of times. Sometimes my blood count isn't high enough for whatever reasons, and like I couldn't. But I have had people ring me.
No way.
Asking for my blood.
Gives a bang off that blood there on.
Basically, wow. the Irish Blood Transfusion Service ringing me up going, our stocks are low. Are you able to come? Are you able to donate this week or whatever?
Okay.
And I'm like, I go off the phone. I go, oh, someone just rang me asking me for my blood.
And you're like, yeah, I mean, of course, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
What are you going to do? No, sorry. I couldn't possibly,
Well, I'll tell you, if you have a sniffle, they won't take it.
Oh, of course. Yeah. But then, of course, some days you can't do it, right?
Some days you just can't. Yeah, if you have any kind of sickness or any kind of a bug, they won't take it. And I used to like going and getting the crisps and sometimes you might get a Guinness afterwards as well. It's kind of nice.
Oh, yeah, bang a Guinness. Yeah, they have a kind of a big van in UL. It's not even a van. It's more like an RV. It's a huge, big thing.
Okay.
And you can go in there. And I think what people do it for, in addition to the altruism, is there's a kind of you kind of look at the people giving blood and you're like, there's sort of a tummy warming kind of social reinforcement to it all, which I think is very interesting from a sociological perspective. It's like, do you want to be able to be part of that,
And I think they've sorted things out. I hope they have. I remember a few years ago chatting to a friend of mine going, oh, I'm giving blood, do you do that? And he went, well, no, they don't want my blood, and because he's a gay man. And and it's all a hangover from AIDS. Not that AIDS hasn't gone away or HIV hasn't gone away, but there's this idea that if you just ban all gay men or anyone who's ever had anal sex, if you ban them all, then you just won't get HIV, which is nonsense. But
Yeah, it's absolute nonsense. And
I,
but I think it's one of those things. It's a bit like the precautionary principle we were talking about before, right? It's like if
yeah,
you don't understand something, just say no, right? Because the
mm,
consequences are huge, and it's like, oh my god, this is a disaster. And then what happens is people talk, people listen, and then they understand. You know?
exactly. And I think, like, I remember hearing a campaign around that, and somebody saying, a person could go and find someone in prostitution, have sex with them, and then a year and a day later they could give blood, but
Yeah,
a gay man can never give blood.
never.
And so
That's right.
anyway, I think it has been addressed.
I think
But
it has. Yeah, yeah.
time is short,
Hmm.
and you like, we've kind of spoke a little bit last week about the future being now, but it seems to be kind of accelerating. And I think what's interesting is, I am a person who's on social media quite a lot. I am educated, I care about the world, and yet there is news that is just whizzing past me and I'm not seeing it. And I think there's news in plain sight that isn't being understood or heard, or landing. And I think you have a bit more of a handle on it than me. And I thought it might be fun for you to kind of shock us and let us know what's actually happening
Yeah,
in
I
the
sometimes
world.
feel like we are getting obsessed, I think, about minutiae. And what I mean by that is like a journalist liked a tweet. That's a thing that people are talking about today. And I'm not saying that the tweets weren't particularly nice. They weren't, but they're tweets. They don't affect anything. Tweets don't change anything. Even Donald Trump's tweets don't change anything. What changes is when the president of the United States signs an order, right? And the tweets are just a signal. So I think we very often we treat Twitter as if it's reality. We tweet
We
Twitter.
tweet Twitter.
We tweet Twitter.
We tweet Twitter.
And it's not right. It's not. And I think because we're used to a flow of thousands of minds, kind of like basic spewing something. It becomes very difficult to sort of see the big picture. So what you do with all that is you just look at something. The way to get above it is just look at things that happen between countries, and look at things that look like they're going to be more important in 5 years' time. Like in 5 years' time, whether the TD liked the tweet or whatever is not going to matter. The person may not be a TD anymore, or they may be the Taoiseach, whatever. But the point is the actual action is irrelevant. What does matter are things like giant, huge free trade agreements. So a thing called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership was signed last 2 weeks ago. And it received precisely zero mentions in the Irish media. When I say zero, the Irish Times carried one column about it that they got from Reuters, that literally just bought it, they copied and pasted and threw it into their newspaper. Nobody, I would imagine, in the Irish Times probably even read it. It didn't. It's called RCEP, and it didn't bounce off. I mean, we've got other things to be dealing with. We've got a global pandemic, we've got Brexit, whatever. But this is RCEP is really huge. So what it is, it's a trading agreement between 15 countries, like Australia and China and Indonesia, New Zealand, Singapore, Vietnam. Right, this is 30% of the world's population. Okay, it's 2.3 billion people. It's like a third of all global GDP, the output measure of the world. It is the biggest trading bloc in human history. Like I include like the Roman Empire in that, like it's on that scale.
Okay.
Yeah. And so really what it is like, indeed, one of the things that's really amazing about RCEP is that it's a trading agreement between China, Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam. So if you know much about the history of Vietnam, you realize like the Vietnam War was a joke to Vietnam because they spent 1,000 years resisting China.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
if you know the history of China and Japan, you're aware like these fellas actually deciding to trade with each other is a massive, massive deal. And China, Japan, and South Korea are like Germany, France, and Italy, right? Except 10 times bigger. They're huge economies, and like it's a decent third of the world's population. And the fact that people can trade freely is a very, very good thing. It's a very good thing. for those people, because it means that those people are going to get rich, they're going to get wealthy, their living standards are going to rise, their kids are, infant mortality rates are going to get lower, they're going to be able to build new things, universities are going to come up with new technologies. It's going to be awesome. If you believe in a sort of a world where there are these great powers fighting against each other, and all that, you can say, well, this accelerates the decline of the United States as the global hegemon and all that. And yeah, look, I'm not a huge proponent of that theory, but that's what's happening. But anyway, RCEP is that's going to matter in 5 years' time. In 5 years' time, that's going to be a huge market. If you're going to be able to sell into it, Irish companies are going to get access to way more markets. So if you get access to Vietnam, you get access to South Korea at the same time. So it's going to be a huge deal. And yeah, great. It probably means that people are talking, oh, this is China's new empire and all that. Like there's that kind of sort of feeling to it, which it may be true, it may not be. I'm not sure. I often think a lot of that stuff is kind of rooted in racism, but yeah, it's there. And then the other kind
fear,
I
suppose.
And fear, right? And fear of people who don't share the same value structure as us at all. Rocking up and saying, hey, listen, we're not super big fans of free speech. We're not super big fans of open intellectual inquiry. And now we have control over whether your products can be sold or not. Right. So will it result in a chilling of criticism against the regimes in power? Because remember, it's 15 different countries, right? And you've got everyone from in that group, you've got everyone from Xi Jinping, right? The deeply autocratic premier of China, and Jacinda Ardern, who everyone on the internet loves, right? She's our queen. She's the new Lady Diana. So you've got everyone in there, right? And it's all there. So that happened, and then the other kind of major thing that happened, and in fact, it was announced a couple of days ago, was something called DeepMind. So DeepMind is essentially a giant computer system. It's an artificial intelligence system, but it's basically a big computer. And what the big computer did was it figured out how to understand protein folding. The reason that matters is essentially every protein is made from amino acids, and these amino acids get folded together to form proteins. And it's like there are trillions of ways that this could happen. Yeah. And the proteins are the things that actually make us up. So if you're able to understand how to get from very, very, very simple amino acids to the complex protein folding structures that we've got, you can make better drugs, you can make better medicines, you can make anything. It's absolutely fucking amazing. Right. It's amazing what these fellas have been able to do. And I'm super impressed with it, because it's just kind of lashing as much computer power as you can do, like, at this problem. And it's sort of kind of solved it. It's great. And they beat 100 other
competitors.
There's a competition that you can do to win it. It's called CASP competition. But anyway, long story short, in the time that we've all been freaking out about, tweets and oh, can we understand this and that and the other, a giant piece of the international puzzle has sort of been locked into place. And we as a small country have to just dance around that. We have to just get our heads around how to make, like, that's the ocean. We're the cork on the ocean. That's
okay.
Like, we don't get a choice in like what that looks like or whatever. And then this DeepMind thing means like, this is just it's just pure progress. It's a thing that in the world, in the universe didn't exist before, right? It did not exist before. And then these men, these women, they got into a room and they lashed a load of brain power at a load of computers.
Yeah.
Out came something completely new. And that's amazing. Like, and people are like, oh, what's the point in investing in research? So you're all just sitting around on your hoops doing nothing. And you're like, no, like, this is,
research is where
genuinely amazing progress. The downside of the course is techno-futurists, they tend to go in like one of two directions. Either like they're utopian, they're kind of like, oh yeah, DeepMind, it'll make amazing drugs, it'll all go well. And then there's the dystopian people, and they're like, oh no, AI will conquer all the drones, They'll just find a way to just inject us with just
Yes.
stupid fluid, and we'll be grand, and then we'll just go around doing our thing.
Yes.
Which is why we shouldn't read 1984. 1984 is sort of the classic dystopian novel. What we should
Right.
read is Brave New World.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, we did
Yeah,
talk about this
we
before,
did.
and that
We
it
did.
is actually much more accurate. The dumbing down, or
Yeah.
the what do you call it? The
Infantilization of our culture. Yeah. Now
yeah,
there's a book around
yeah.
here called Amusing Ourselves to Death. I don't know where it is. I've read a load of his books. He's got another one called The End of Education. And the basic idea is we are so focused on the now, on the moment, that we actually
Yes.
miss the bigger picture.
Right.
And I think that we could very easily do that in this moment, because we've got daily counts or whatever. But yeah, it's a there are loads and loads and loads of reasons to feel better about 2021. There really are.
The quickest question in the world. What phrase do you most overuse, Stephen?
Absolutely. Maybe.
Absolutely. Well, as you're, yeah, I found I've started saying 100% recently, and I can't stop. I just can't
Yeah.
stop saying it.
Yeah.
And this was just, I threw a quick Proust in there, question that we've been tipping away at, and the public say the mixture of no, so I suppose, okay, like and right, for fuck's sake, like literally FFS. In fairness, that's simply not true. Look at your, on the other hand, absolutely. So we've got one of your absolutely in
Yeah.
there as well. Oh, I forgot. There was one. Hold on a minute now. And then fuck off, gal. So there you go. Sorry, this should be just DPGing the episode right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. No, I think I
Stephen,
did that
I
before.
understand that we've had to do a bit of a lightning episode this week, but we are talking future, so
Mhm.
fascinating
And we'll
stuff.
be in the
Thank you.
future. We'll be in the future soon. And look, I just text me when you know
I
the
will.
results.
I will indeed. I
Yeah.
will let
Do.
you know.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, have a very good week,
Yeah.
and
You
I
too.
look forward to talking again next week. Bye bye.
Okay.